Every day, Japanese patrol crews spot 4 white hulls on the edge of their radar. Chinese Coast Guard ships, one always packing an autocannon. In 2024, this standoff happened 355 times near disputed islands Japan has sworn never to arm. Now, Tokyo is rewriting decades of restraint, quietly turning its Coast Guard into the front line of a conflict no one dares start. The old rules are breaking. What happens next is not routine. Bridge alarms sound as 4 blips appear on the radar. Chinese Coast Guard ships closing from the northeast. The officer on duty checks the formation. 2 standard cutters, 1 support vessel, and a lead ship with a deck-mounted autocannon, barrel angled toward the horizon. The distance from Ishigaki base is 170 kilometers, but for the crew of Japan's 11th Regional Coast Guard, it might as well be next door. These encounters have become routine. In the last year, Chinese ships entered the contiguous zone almost every day and crossed into Japanese territorial waters more than 24 times. The drill never changes, shadow, warn, interpose. No one reaches for the trigger. The standing order is clear: presence, not provocation. A petty officer, eyes locked on the radar, mutters, "If they're there, we're here. That's the job." On the bridge, the radio crackles with warnings issued in Japanese, then Chinese. The reply is silent, punctuated by the low hum of engines as the Chinese ships hold their line. Just inside the boundary, the Japanese crew tracks every maneuver, logging time, distance, and hull numbers. They know the rules. No escalation, no firing, even as the autocannon glints in the morning light. For hours, the 2 sides shadow each other, separated by a few hundred meters in a world of intent. When the Chinese ships finally turn away, the relief is measured, not complete. The logbook notes another incursion, another day on the edge. The tension never leaves. For these crews, restraint is more than policy, it is survival. Article 9 of Japan's Constitution, drafted in 1947, renounces war and prohibits the maintenance of armed forces. For decades, this clause kept Japan's maritime posture firmly defensive. Patrol, not confrontation. That foundation held until September 2012, when the Japanese government nationalized the Senkaku Islands. The move triggered a new era. Chinese Coast Guard ships began entering the surrounding waters, transforming rare encounters into routine standoffs. By 2019, China's fleet of large Coast Guard vessels had more than tripled, outnumbering Japan's by nearly 2 to 1. In January 2021, China passed its Coast Guard law authorizing the use of weapons in any waters it claims, including those around the Senkakus. The ambiguity of this law unsettled Tokyo, prompting a review of Japan's own legal framework. That same year, Japan amended its Coast Guard law to clarify authority for non-lethal measures against foreign incursions, strengthening the Coast Guard's ability to respond without crossing the threshold into military conflict. December 2022 brought the National Security Strategy and Defense Buildup Program, which redefined Japan's approach to regional threats. For the first time since World War II, policymakers openly discussed the counterstrike capabilities and closer integration between the Coast Guard and self-defense forces. In May 2023, new internal guidelines authorized the Minister of Defense to assume operational control of the Coast Guard during an armed attack situation, creating a legal bridge between law enforcement and national defense. Each of these steps built the legal scaffolding behind the daily orders now carried out in the East China Sea, where the line between patrol and war has grown thinner with every new statute. China's Coast Guard operates the largest maritime law enforcement fleet on Earth. Pentagon estimates count more than 150 ships over 1,000 tons, with another 570 smaller patrol craft. Among these, 2 vessels draw particular attention: CG-2901 and CCG-5901, each displacing 12,000 tons. These so-called monster ships are larger than most Navy destroyers and 3 times the size of a U.S. Coast Guard Legend-class cutter. Their hulls carry a 76mm naval gun, 2 30mm cannons, and anti-aircraft machine guns. Helicopter hangars and flight decks support extended patrols. High-capacity water cannons and interceptor boats give them reach far beyond what the Japan Coast Guard can match. These ships are built for endurance. With top speeds of 25 knots and ranges exceeding 10,000 nautical miles, they can remain on station for days, sometimes weeks, without returning to port. The effect is not subtle. When a 12,000-ton cutter appears near the Senkaku Islands, it projects power without the need for a warship's gray hull. Every barrel and sensor array signals intent to stay, to watch, to outlast. In August 2025, Chinese vessels set a new record for continuous presence near the Senkakus, testing the stamina of Japanese patrols. On another occasion, Chinese cutters remained inside Japanese territorial waters for more than 57 hours, shadowing fishing boats and refusing to leave until challenged repeatedly. These numbers are not anomalies. They are the pattern. Each incursion, each lingering presence is a demonstration of scale and patience. For the crews of Japan's Coast Guard, the iron balance is measured not just in tonnage, but in hours and days spent holding the line against ships designed to dominate by simply refusing to go away. Japan's Coast Guard is no longer standing still. The fleet now fields 147 patrol vessels, supported by 35 aircraft and 60 helicopters. Fiscal requests reached 317.7 billion yen for 2026, a 14% jump, the largest in Coast Guard history. The next year's budget climbs even higher to 320 billion yen. At Ishigaki, the base has transformed. 12 large patrol vessels line the docks, quarters built for 600 crew, and the entire 11th Regional Coast Guard has more than doubled its personnel since 2010. Procurement is reshaping the force. New Miyako-class cutters, 117 meters long, 3,500 tons, armed with 40mm guns, are entering service, with 9 planned by 2028. These ships are built for endurance and presence, able to hold their ground against larger adversaries. Older vessels are being upgraded, while the Kunigami-class and others rotate through Senkaku patrols, their hulls a familiar sight in contested waters. The expansion is not just at sea. Since April 2025, 3M Q-9B Sea Guardian drones have begun flying out of Kitakyushu, logging 30-hour surveillance missions over the Senkakus. 2 more will join by March 2026, with a total of 9 planned by 2028. These drones feed live radar and infrared data to command centers and patrol vessels, tightening the net around any intruder. For the crews at Ishigaki, these new assets mean faster response times, wider coverage, and fewer blind spots. The logbooks once filled with hours of uncertainty are now matched by data, bearing, speed, hull numbers beamed down from the sky. But with every new tool, the pressure to respond grows. The drones above are always watching, and soon they will see what human eyes cannot. Gray zone operations unfold in the narrowest margins, where every maneuver is calculated to test the limits without crossing into open conflict. In October 2020, Chinese Coast Guard ships remained inside Japan's territorial waters near the Senkaku Islands for 57 hours and 39 minutes, tracking Japanese fishing boats and refusing to leave despite repeated warnings. Japan Coast Guard crews were forced to stay on station for more than 2 days, maintaining a law enforcement posture even as the pressure mounted. The rules forbid escalation, yet the burden of restraint falls entirely on the crew. Former Vice Commandant Akamoto Shigeo has warned that China's strategy is a long campaign of attrition, using white-hulled Coast Guard ships instead of gray warships to slowly erode Japan's effective control. Each prolonged standoff is not just a test of endurance, but of policy, and the cost is measured in exhaustion and uncertainty. May 2023 brought a new control guideline, granting the Minister of Defense authority to direct Coast Guard units if an armed attack is declared. This policy closes the gap between civilian law enforcement and military response, and it also raises the risk of rapid escalation. The Joint Operations Command, activated in March 2025, now links the Coast Guard with ground, maritime, air, space, and cyber forces under a unified chain of command. Japan's defense budget reached $70 billion in 2025, hitting the 2% of GDP target 2 years ahead of schedule. The Senkaku Islands sit just 105 miles from Taiwan, and the Ryukyu chain stretches only 110 kilometers from the nearest Taiwanese shore. In December 2025, as many as 90 Chinese naval and Coast Guard vessels conducted exercises from the South China Sea to the Ryukyus. F-15 fighters from Okinawa stand ready to scramble at any sign of escalation. The line between patrol and war now runs through these contested waters, mapped out by policy, geography, and the unpredictable pace of confrontation. In the East China Sea, a single miscalculation could redraw borders or trigger a global crisis. As Japan arms its coast guard and China intensifies pressure, every patrol now tests the limits of peace. The next signal sent from these waters could change the region overnight.